most underrated voice in all media. Chuck Ocelli.
May 10, 2022, allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar. And this, indeed, is the show you were looking for. That is the Ocelli Effect. And guess how I know that? Because you're hearing me babble on right now. So, no matter whether you're coming to us live as we do this through the various radio apps and all that good stuff through Ocelli.com radio, or if you're catching us further on down the stream via your fondle slab of choice, your applicable application, your podcatcher du jour, welcome. Anyway, Tears Day, Tuesday, the second broadcast day of the week for the Ocelli Effect.
Ocelli.com.
Revelation through conversation.
Time running fast on a Tuesday, Ocelli Effect. But anyway, Greg Palast in the first hour, investigative journalist, and a guy who I'm going to physically meet up with when he comes to Georgia because I got some things to show him. And it's a weird deal where he's, tracking down the elections and how things are being stolen. And no, it's not the Trump narrative. The thing I've been trying to say and nobody wanted to hear, which is that this state is one of the most corrupt things I've ever seen. And that's saying something since I'm from Jersey. Anyways, moving forward, Christie Aphrodite. MyTrueEssence.net, ChristieAphrodite.com. Talk about a change of gears. We go from the unnatural, weird vow system of voting, which I no longer even bother to register, but then again, I don't have an official ID or anything, so screw it. And I'm in a weird mood because Mrs. O is out of town. It's just me and Frankie and the dogs, so this ought to be interesting. We've been talking about depression. We've been talking about natural solutions. We've been talking about lots of things that could be done, could be examined, and ideas that go far outside of the big pharma box, which are just better for you. They're good ideas. Of course, none of this is medical advice. Let's keep that in mind. But it is an observation. It is a exchange of information where there might be some things that you could consider, but you must investigate these things for yourself, especially if you're on some sort of medications, you're putting contradictory things into your body. You want to make sure not to harm yourself. So always check with everybody involved in the equation and everything involved in the equation before you move forward with any of the ideas you might hear. Again, not medical advice, not necessarily any of that kind of stuff, but if you go to mytrueessence.net and you go to ChristieAphrodite.com, there's even more information about this. But anyway, enough out of my mouth. Christie Aphrodite, we've been talking depression, we've been talking trauma, we've been talking what it is that somebody might be able to do to contend with all this stuff. Ooh, first, how you doing? But second, what are we going to talk about tonight?
I'm awesome. Spring is just springing around here, a little bit crazy. But I kind of figured it's time for maybe some flower power. Because it is spring, and coincidentally, every topic we've talked about, from heart to mental illness to
headaches,
everything, I think every topic we've done, flowers actually can be part of the solution. And I know that flower power has kind of a negative connotation. In fact, I have people in my life that called me a hippie before I ever even thought that I was a hippie, and I don't even actually really think I am. But I have to say the hippies were right, and flowers don't just look beautiful in spring and summer, and some of them don't just smell nice. They're chock full of flavonoids, terpenes, sesquiterpenes, just all sorts of use or properties that we can actually implement and utilize in our life as food, as medicine. From things from like maybe assisting with baldness to, again, all of the other health topics we've talked about in the past. And of course, if we do care about our food supply, whether we are growing our own food or not, bees and butterflies are kind of important. And the only reason they're not there is because we're killing their habitats, right? So there's so many reasons to learn flowers, maybe even plant some, or learn to identify them in the wild so you can implement them for, things such as cold, flu, respiratory issues, arthritis, cancer, all sorts of things. So is that cool if we kind of talk about some flower power tonight?
Well, I feel real good about it, especially if we start from the very basic in the very beginning, which, okay, a common trope, a common thing, at least little boys used to do this. They would bring their aunts, their babysitters, I guess sometimes their moms. I never did that, but some other people would bring their moms dandelions. And they would say, look, I got flowers for you. Because they're kind of pretty, they're kind of nice. Most people say, well, it's just a weed and it kills grass. And okay. But dandelions, okay, not technically a flower by a lot of people's estimations, but kind of has the appearance of a flower. Even something like that has a lot of positive uses. And because I got a vowel at the end of my name, I know that eating dandelions is not bad for you. Generally speaking.
Definitely not bad for you. And in fact, according to PubMed.gov and other peer-reviewed scientific journals, there are no known interactions. It's one of those herbs, like the culinary herbs we've speak of, basil, sage, rosemary, thyme, etc., that are generally regarded as safe.
Well, that doesn't mean that it might not, upset somebody's stomach if you're not accustomed to something like that that's in its raw form. You may have to, work with it a little. But I used to know guys that would just basically take these things, and also you got to watch what they're exposed to, right? Not them themselves, but, if there's a bunch of weed killer on a dandelion, don't eat it, especially if it's this toxic crap.
Toxic fumes in roadsides or...
But if you if you got some dandelions that are grown in a pretty decent patch of grass and are not covered in crap, you got something that is pretty universally acceptable. Again, maybe, a little agita or something for some people, but frankly... one of the more mellow, sort of readily available, freely available things out there. And I used to see these go on salads all the time, right? So, as some people would say, it's a garnish, but you can eat it. And but I would just say, no, it was just commonplace. The idea of eating one of those things is normal now. Somebody might say, well, yeah, but Chuck, that's not a flower. How about roses? Nobody eats roses, right? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Yes, you can. And now I know they're more expensive.
How are dandelions not a flower? What are those yellow things with all the petals?
Well, see, that's always been my contention too. But what do you don't exactly go to date a girl and show up with dandelions unless you're 7. But I'm just saying, they look good.
They were programmed that they're weeds and they're bad and they have to be eradicated.
Right. See, but, 7-year-old Italian girl, she might think you brought her a salad. I'm just saying, it's, at least in the old days. I don't know. Do people still eat dandelions? They should. But
people not only eat them, they drink them, they use them as skincare, herbal baths, infusions, all sorts of variety. In fact, there are certain stores that sell dandelions. And, I think it's important to note the entire plant is edible, right? Edible and medicinal. In fact, you can even use the root. It has no caffeine, but if you dehydrate and you can roast it and use it as a coffee replacement, or better yet, you can even take a chicory root and mix them together. Rose. You brought up rose too. Okay. Rose. All right. No, but let me finish about dandelion. And I know we went over a little bit before, but I just want people to understand that they are the most nutritious green that you can find in your yard, okay? So, and there's like little things, like, for example, if you get stung by a bee, grab a dandelion flower and put it right on the sting, and it's going to go away, okay? So if you're considering eating dandelions and you have a typical standard American diet, I'm not going to suggest going from your drive-through to eating a salad full of 100% dandelions. Because you mentioned stomach upset. And of course, most stomach upset, honestly, is constipation, right? So, if that's going to start getting things moving, yeah, your little belly's going to hurt. So we're going to ease into herbs very slowly. And I actually have a video about that. I always suggest mixing. Don't just go out there and eat like a whole salad of henbit or dead nettles. You're going to hate it. You're never going to do it again. And yeah, you're going to go to the bathroom and your tummy might go boo-boo. Okay, so...
well, see, that's why I thought it was good to suggest adding it to a salad. Like, you get a regular salad, that most people are used to, which is full of that lettuce that's not really all that great for you, but, you're accustomed to it, and you add some of the dandelions to it. It's not a bad idea because it'll get you used to them, and you can sort of incrementally introduce them into your diet, right?
Right. And if you if you don't want to eat them at all, if you're just like, oh my God, this is totally gross, then turn them into a tea, right? And there's like hardly any flavor at all. And then flavor it with whatever you want, whether that's mint or honey or lemon or even nettles makes an amazing tea. But I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about nettles tonight because I never really see any flowers because I'm eating it as soon as I find it.
Well, no, I just mentioned the two.
Sorry?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I bring them up is because they're really commonplace and people know exactly what we're talking about, and they might not be able to identify every other flower. That's why I brought up, first the dandelions, which everybody sees just about everywhere who's hearing us right now. And then you have roses, which everybody knows about. So that's why I brought up those two first, but I'm sure you've got a lot of stops in between. So by all means, I'll just be quiet and listen. But I think dandelions have been treated pretty well here. And there's a lot of ways to work with this. By the way, you can make a tea out of roses as well. And more than just a tea, if you use part of the plant for a tea and then you actually eat part of the plant, you can actually dissect it and do different things with different parts of the rose plant. So, and that's another thing, by the way, just really quickly, with the dandelions, sometimes they have the green leaves around them, right? And so those are useful too, again, barring contamination or, look, if your dog's crapping on your dandelions, don't eat them. But you know what I'm saying? you gotta be discerning about this a bit. But if you've got clean, again, not exposed to a bunch of toxins from being roadside or whatever, set of dandelions, you can utilize the whole plant. Which includes, again, like you said, the root, the extra leaves, the thing that looks like a flower, the stem, the whole bit. But anyway, I just wanted to note that and then let you have it. Go right ahead and tell us about some more.
Right. I just want to say about dandelions, they're super rich in vitamins and micronutrients. So you have your A, B, C, D, E, and K. Okay. And then also like calcium, copper, cobalt, zinc, magnesium, potassium, and such. So what's really cool about herbs, and really it's everything in general, the things God, nature, whoever, whatever is in charge of all of this beautiful chaos knows when these things need to grow, right? We are also nature, right? So there's this divine intelligence that everything that we need is provided for us at that time. So being spring, and I'm glad you brought up dandelions because they're out there right now, and I thought that we could talk, or try to mainly focus on flowers that we see out there right now But things like dandelion, dock, chickweed, cleavers, all the weeds, so-called weeds, beautiful flowers that are out there right now are super cleansing herbs, okay? Cleansing, nourishing, chock full of nutrients. They even have, oh my God. So, I mean, just dandelions alone can work on every organ of the body, from your gallbladder, your liver, your kidney, your heart, okay? And most all of the herbs growing out there right now have all of the same properties. So right now, when spring, things start to come alive, we're just barely getting off of like a sluggish winter, wondering if we're ever going to be able to get off that couch chair again, you know? At least, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. But Mother Nature provides the herbs / flowers out there that we need right now to stimulate our immune system, to, you know, antioxidants, cleansing powers, diuretic, okay? Because I know most of us naturally eat more in the winter, and we come into like March, April feeling a little sluggish and like, okay. Even though that bright sun and dandelion, hello, those beautiful bright little suns, I mean, this ray of sunshine gives us a little energy in itself, but if you're going to compound it with all of the flowers that are found outgrowing right now, then, you know, you're going to be sure to get all of the vitamins and minerals you need. So that being said, dandelion, right, we just addressed, and also and go verify everything I say, PubMed.gov, anti-tumor properties. Okay, in fact, you know what? I have a bunch of links I'm going to put in the text chat. Okay. They are on my site and like on my Twitter and stuff, but let me pull some of these up and add them so whoever's listening or at least in the chat can check out these links. I'll read the titles.
Right.
So if you're listening to this in the future, you can find the reports that we're discussing. But here's one.
I'll grab
right
all
now.
of the links from the Ocelli.com chat, which, by the way, if you come back later after the show, you can wind it back a little bit and look and get the links yourself. But if not, I'll include it with the show notes, so that you'll have points of reference. I'll probably just come up with a list that says, you know, Christie's references for tonight, and I will put each one of the links that you put there in with the show notes. Okay. And
all right. I'm not gonna like load up or anything. I'll just put like one of whatever flower we talk about. But I just put one in the chat right now. The title is The Efficacy of Dandelion Root Extract in Inducing Apoptosis in Drug-Resistant Human Melanoma Cells. Okay, so apoptosis is basically where the cancer cells pop and they are essentially destroyed. Okay, so again, anything we say is not intended to be medical advice. Do not try this at home. And if for some crazy reason you want to, you know, maybe try some of the things that we've recommended, do your own due diligence, talk with your medical professional, make sure you have no contraindications, and, you know, because all these things, that's another wonderful thing about flower power, is that if you can't take one for whatever reason, there's a million more to choose from, right? And I would also like to caution you, if you're starting with herbs, just start with one at a time, give it a couple weeks, make sure that it is benefiting you or at least not hurting you, right? Because some take longer. Sometimes you need to take them for 3 or 4 weeks to experience anything, right? There's no quick fix or magic pill. I mean, in some cases, you'll definitely experience immediate results, but you're not going to just drink 1 cup of dandelion tea or 1 bottle of dandelion tincture, and then your cancer that it took you 30 years to build just go away overnight. You know what I mean? Maybe a month, maybe 6 months, but whatever. So there's also dock out there growing right now, which is another one that is really, it has anti-tumor, anti-cancer properties. And again, this is all according to PubMed.gov. It's really good for the liver. It's also astringent and cleanser.
Well, everybody knows. Yeah, but everybody knows what dandelions look like. What are we talking about here? What is the appearance of this thing so that somebody could recognize it?
Yeah, you know what? We should just talk about popular ones.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I mean, what am I? Oh, it's green.
Yeah, well.
You know, but most people, if you live in the, well, if you have a weed problem, like if you're somebody who's complaining about weeds, or you live in the country, for the most part, you know what dock is, and a lot of people aren't happy about it. But I happen to think it is super delicious. They can grow kind of tall, a couple feet or so. They would be shaped, at least the plant form, similar to a dandelion, like rosette and then a stalk coming up. But the flowers and such would be totally different. But the leaves it's also considered a bitter, like dandelion, but they have more of a lemony-ish, kind of fresh, crispy kind of taste. But the bigger and older it gets, like the dandelion, they're going to be more bitter. However, bitters are good for us, right? And if you can add, you know, even if you're just throwing a couple leaves into your soup, or chop it up and put it in your eggs, or something minuscule like that, just that little bit of bitters is going to help get the digestive juices flowing, right? And because a lot of our problems, again, are, you know, almost everyone I talk to or that comes to me and asks for help, they tell me they have digestive issues, bowel issue, you know, elimination issues, or the opposite. And each of these herbs can help with that. Excuse me. And believe it or not, so can roses. So we might as well talk about roses since you brought it up. And they are in bloom right now. And check if there are any other herbs or flowers in your yard or anywhere that you recognize. Feel free to bring it up. And, I just looked at the chat. Shout out to Amber. Great to see you. And I also shout out to Sherry. I know she's not in the chat, but listening. Her and her beautiful family. And they know a lot about flowers. In fact, if you think I have a gigantic garden, holy cow. If you are in Northwest Arkansas, they have, I think, the best nursery I've ever been to, and they're just beautiful people. And if they don't have your flowers or herbs, which I'm sure they do, but if not, they'll most likely be able to, but just go there and you can't want for a thing. So I get a lot of my flowers there because my goal is to really have every single one planted on the property. Every single flower I can every flower I know, and then some. So, all right. So roses, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of rose hips, right?
Right.
It's like a popular tea. It's also antioxidant, immune stimulant. People use it for coughs and colds and even cataracts. Like, there are so many uses throughout history in every tribe, or I'll just say every native population on all continents.
I found it useful as a component in a burn cream I used to make. Roses are great for that because they're very good topically as well. As a component for it, right?
Absolutely. They are one of the best things for skin, especially Bulgarian rose. And since, I might as well just bring that up right now. Bulgarian rose has, and this is, here, I'm going to put this right here in the chat right now because I can pull it up on my site super quick.
Sure.
But Bulgarian rose has reduced, what's the word? Aluminum-induced, not reduced, reversed. Aluminum-induced neurotoxicity. Okay, in a lab setting.
Wow,
so,
I was not aware of that.
Sorry?
I said I was not aware of that because that can do a lot of damage. Aluminum's one of these things that does serious damage to neuropathology.
Yeah. And, it's one of the things that helped me heal my brain damage. And we may even be breathing aluminum all the time, whether you're in, a warehouse or, welding or whatever, right? So,
well, plenty of people contend that's sprayed over our heads.
Report.
Yeah, sorry. Plenty of people contend that's sprayed over our heads often as well. You know what? We found it in baby formula as an anti-clumping agent. We found it repeatedly in food, just sort of introduced in there. You have a bit of what would we call that? Let's see, leaching from the use of aluminum, believe it or not, in cans and things. When it comes to various, even health food products that are in aluminum cans, sometimes you get a little bit of leaching, which you're not supposed to get, but you do.
Right.
So there's a whole variety of ways aluminum gets introduced into your system, and it slaughters brain cells. It slaughters neuropathology. So it's definitely detrimental, no matter how you slice it, no matter how you got it.
So flower power,
Flower
right?
power.
Okay, now, doesn't it feel good to know that nature has first you should be pissed that all of these simple solutions they already know, but they lie to you about and tell you there are no solutions. But then when you find out, look, I'm going to read, it's just a short abstract here, and I'm going to read just a little bit of it for the people who are not in the text chat and are listening later.
Sure.
Okay? But, all right, so furthermore, it's reported effective for the care of several diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and depressive illness. In this study, all right, evaluated the effects of the essential oils on neuronal death induced by hydrogen peroxide, aluminum, zinc, or the antagonist of estrogen receptor, tamoxifen. Okay, among tests, we found that neuronal death was attenuated by essential oils of damask rose, also known as Bulgarian rose, eucalyptus, fennel, geranium, ginger, kabasu, mandarin, myrrh, and neroli. Damask rose had protective effects against aluminum-induced neurotoxicity, while geranium and rosemary showed protective activity against zinc-induced neurotoxicity. In contrast, geranium oil and ginger oil enhanced the neurotoxicity of tamoxifen. Okay, so these reports are there. You can research all of this. And, this is how I made my medicine, Chuck. Okay? I was that person with brain damage who couldn't frickin' talk or walk and didn't remember my neighbors. You know what I mean? And so I listened to my old shows, and then I made friends with PubMed.gov again and started making my medicine, and then, oh, poof, there goes my arthritis. Oh, what? Poof, there goes my rashes. Oh, wait, hey, look, I can walk now instead of hunched over in an L shape crying and falling over.
Right.
I'm only going to talk about, like I always do, things that I know and have personal experience with. Okay, so
Well, let me
because
share something with you here about this again about the toxicity and aluminum, because I took a time to personally study autopsies, right? And I did it for a purpose, and I actually went and observed autopsies and had discussions with various individuals who are qualified. I'm not a qualified doctor, but I swear to you, I could do a better job than some coroners in a lot of places, even as blind as I am. But here's the thing. I started having discussions with these guys because, look, I wasn't looking at a lot of autopsies of murder victims and things. I mean, they allowed me to take a look at others. And a bunch of them had been, allegedly victims of what they were calling dementia at the time. And different autopsists who reported things to me about the commonality of certain things, and we were talking about causality of death and really what that comes down to, the very lazy trope of heart failure and all that, when obviously something else happened before the heart failed in most cases. Anyway, so we're going through all this, and commonly mentioned all the time in these cases where somebody had been notably suffering from dementia before death, guess what these guys kept finding? And they were baffled by it because the textbooks didn't explain this. Aluminum in the brain.
right.
Deposits of aluminum in the brain. And these are guys dissecting the brain. I'm not going to belabor this and get into a whole discussion, but I'm just saying that what they used to call dementia and now they've broken out into a whole bunch of other diseases is, again, your neuropathology being destroyed by aluminum. Okay? They would talk about, well, is this something that runs in the family? Well, maybe it didn't used to. Now it does. And over again, what they kept finding in different states, all in one region of the country, really, in the Northeast, but in different states from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania to New Jersey to New York, all the way down to Delaware, is in that one section of the country, aluminum in the brain.
Right.
And at the time, like I said, it wasn't like you flip to a textbook and say, okay, what is this? Well, it was obviously, no, they didn't know why this was even happening. It was just a common occurrence, and that was it.
Right.
But what we have learned since then, like I said, is in a lot of cases, all this stuff, whether it's from leaching or it's in the air or you're working in an industrial situation.
Products.
Yeah.
Right.
And various
Yeah.
products, which people don't think of as having aluminum, something like, ready?
Deodorant.
Right. That's where I was going.
Makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I'm just saying that there's a reason why this is useful, and you may not even be aware that basically you have a level of aluminum poisoning. I don't know if there's a blood test for that. I mean, I'm sure there is somewhere, but you probably have to specifically, ask for it and find out what your levels are. And here's the thing. If you use the preventative, natural stuff that kind of combats it in the first place, I'm thinking to myself, it's not it's not a catch-all. It's not a real prophylactic, but it's probably not a bad bet if you can introduce stuff that's going to fight. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's not a bad bet if you can introduce stuff into your system that's going to fight the toxicity that might come from something as commonplace as aluminum. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I know you placed some other links in the chat room. I wanted to give you time to do that. And believe me, I'm going to collect them all and show them to people. So please continue, Christie, though, because we're just really touching roses. And, geez, we've already gone through almost 40 minutes of this hour.
And I just want to say, I'm not on Facebook a lot, but I post all these links regularly. I also post them on my Twitter regularly. And they're all on my site, mytrueessence.net, almost all the product descriptions, especially like the real medicinal ones. I put dozens of links there, so don't go there just because I'm trying to get you to buy something. No, I put that there because I want you all to understand what I know as well. And feel free to, use ideas from my recipes. There's some that only have 5 ingredients and there's some with 50. So clearly those are a little more complex and you'd have to build up to, but it's not going to hurt you to look at, something with, like, for example, I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's called Sweet Days Ease.
Okay.
And within that one product, there's dozens of links, and that's where I'm picking up these rose ones. There's also many more: neroli, wild carrot, sandalwood, frankincense, magnolia, tuberose, helichrysum, yuzu, pine needles, even just, yeah. So use it for the information that's there, and, you know, and of course do your own search. But I'm just saying, all these have already been gathered. Like, I literally have a list. It's like 40 pages long of links for all this stuff that I saved. But gardenia, okay, ginger, turmeric, all of these have the same, similar properties. So, but we're gonna try to keep this show on flowers that are growing currently, right?
Right.
So, well, my magnolia is starting to bloom, and I know you, living in the South, have to know what magnolias are, right?
Right.
Did you know that they are also used for the prevention and treatment of cancer?
I was not aware of that. Look, I don't ever claim to have knowledge that I don't have. I wasn't aware that magnolias. I mean, look, I'm aware of this much. Everything you see growing that nature provides has a purpose. But it's not that I know every purpose of everything that I see. So no, magnolias I didn't know much about. I know that they're decorative. That's about it. But I'm sure they've got other purposes.
They're beautiful, and they smell nice. And yeah, so their flowers, leaves, and bark can be used for skin cancer, as well as brain, breast, cervical, colon, liver, lung, prostate, etc. And again, I am reading this from PubMed.gov. I am not making this up. The people who tell you there are no cures for the issues we face have a different story to tell at PubMed.gov. So let's see. Morning glories. Did you know anything about morning glories? Or
I have seen other people use them, but the specifics on it I don't know. I've been told that it's an antioxidant. That morning glories, when you take them and you process them a bit, it's a great antioxidant in general, and can be, let's see, how do I put this politely, used either topically or placed inside the body. In fact, I've heard that it's not a bad thing to place it in a place that a lot of people don't want to place things. But for certain purposes,
Chuck.
as a suppository. Thank you. I was struggling for the word there. I didn't want to. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Suppository.
I thought you were just trying to be polite. I'm like, don't you remember who you're talking to tonight?
Oh no. Listen, and if people heard us off air, they'd know that there's no reason for me to be polite. But no, I was struggling for the word there. I was trying to think of what is it that you call that. Yeah, but it's. See, a suppository to me is very negative because it's usually, covered again in some kind of, oily-based substance capsule. There's a way to process morning glories and a couple of other flowers that, if they are introduced as a suppository, can straighten out a bunch of things, including rashes, problems with that area, with the colon. What do they call that now? The spastic bowel or whatever. It's a syndrome, right? It's
irritable bowel syndrome.
That's it, irritable bowel syndrome. It assists with that, and I know that it's useful as a suppository. Now, I don't know anything about anybody eating them, but I imagine you probably could, because, quite frankly, the majority of flowers that you see can be eaten in some way. So, right. But that's my guess, yeah.
So these studies weren't on eating them, and I'm super impressed that you actually have heard that much about it, because even when I post a picture of them climbing my fence, there's always somebody on social media that's going to be like, oh my God, that you got to get rid of that weed. It's going to, kill everything in your garden or whatever. And But yeah, I will say this. Let's see. Let me read to you a title that I posted on Twitter recently. PubMed.gov. Anti-cancer activity of the leaf extracts. And so they did their aqueous and alcohol extracts and tested against human lung, human liver, human breast cancer, and they all have been found to induce phase cell cycle arrest and apoptosis.
Well, and see, there you go. That's why it actually makes sense as a suppository, because, again, the colorectal area of the body has, I hate to say this, but these similar properties where you have this very stretchy but yet soft tissue, and it apparently assists with exactly that kind of tissue from what you're describing to me, something that's flexible and yet more soft all the way around. So that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Chuck, do you have any flowers in your yard or neighborhood or something that stand out? Do you have any questions, or do you want me to just pick a flower in my yard?
Well, it's a little off topic maybe, but the area where I live specifically, there's a lot of these cherry blossom trees, right? And a cherry blossom is flowery, right? And some people might have them growing. I mean, that's just for me. Maybe they're not that common everywhere. I never really paid that much attention to stuff like that. The honeysuckles are everywhere, that's for sure. We could talk about those, or we could talk about the cherry blossoms. Like I said, again, it's one of those things. They literally have a cherry blossom festival here in Macon because there's so many. I think it's actually the largest concentration of cherry blossom trees in the country, right? So,
well, you actually can use them as medicine, and they allegedly have anti-aging, skin whitening, even properties. However, I wouldn't want to pick the blossoms because that's going to be the fruit, right? But if you had like a whole bunch of, cherry trees and such, you absolutely can use them for multiple things, including eating them or turning them into candies. Some people even pickle them. So
pickling cherries.
Sorry.
Okay. Pickling cherries, I never heard of that, but okay, go ahead.
No, the actual blossoms.
Oh, the blossoms. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or even like make a syrup like people do with lilacs.
I can imagine,
boiling water, sugar, flour.
Real basic stuff. You can make a syrup out of it. That makes sense too. Okay. Excellent.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and all of these, of course, you can if you want to preserve the properties of the freshness, after the season, you can tincture them or you can vinegar them, right?
Right.
And then they'll last year round. But I'm glad you brought up honeysuckle because that definitely is something that's prevalent here in the South. And honeysuckle is actually medicine. And we have already brought up the cancer word and all of these other beautiful flowers we talked about. So honeysuckle is no different. It's also used for urinary tract disorders, headaches, diabetes, arthritis. There's literally
honeysuckles,
walking through your neighborhood, there's medicine everywhere.
Well, and here's another thing I want to check with you, because to my memory, honeysuckles are also useful when it comes to people having issues of blood flow and things. You know how we talked about aspirin and how that's not really good for you and you should use other things, stuff like that. But from my understanding, a regular dose of honeysuckle can actually help with circulation.
Right, and respiratory tract issues, okay, and is also purported to have antiviral effects. So,
okay. Well, I've never studied that,
all
but
of these herbs or flowers that we've talked about tonight, they all have that in common: the antiviral, the anti-cancer, the respiratory enhancement, right? The
And honeysuckles,
cleansing.
just really quickly, honeysuckles are not just available in the South. Somebody heard you say that, and yeah, they're plentiful in the South, that's for sure.
Right.
But you can find them in a lot of other areas of the country. I know this because having gone up and down the East Coast, we had honeysuckles in New Jersey. Okay, not as many as we see here in the South. But then again, there wasn't as much, the Garden State. Okay. It is what it is. But I'm just saying that some of these things are growing wild, and some of them might be growing in your yard, just right outside. Or
That's another one that, well, and clearly the South isn't the only place it grows, but they are super prevalent, in fact, to the point where people consider them an invasive, right?
Right.
So, like blackberries on the West Coast in Washington,
Right.
they literally have signs up and they call blackberries an invasive species. but Oops, sorry, I hit that. Blackberries are food and medicine.
Yeah.
So, what? How is that an invasive species?
No, blackberries are great. You know, it's another weird thing. I see people cutting down look, there's two different ways to say it, but pecan trees or pecan trees. I see them cutting those things down because so many of them land on the ground and they spring up more trees and they take over areas in people's land here.
Wow.
There's too many, and I'm like going, are you people insane?
I've seen people cut some really silly stuff down, like 60-foot date palms and beautiful, large producing orange trees. In fact, there's somebody in the chat right now, their neighbor did that, and I used to visit there in the winter, and that was my favorite thing to do, is bring back a bunch of citrus. But the homeowner thought that they were making too much of a mess on her lawn.
Right.
So, and how much do people pay for dates? Isn't that insane?
That's really crazy because, dates are kind of expensive. And look, they especially are when you take somebody to the wrong restaurant. But no, the actual date is definitely kind of an expensive thing. People pay good money for bags of those.
Right. But then they cut down their tree because it's messing up their lawn.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, pecans, walnuts, people are chopping them down all day because of the acids on the outer part of the shell. It's messing up their perfect lawn. I'm like, you're throwing away food and medicine.
Of course. Well, listen, we've only got a few minutes left, and tonight I do have to get done on time because I have the young one here, and it's just me and him and the dogs. So I do have to get off on time. He's waiting on me. So I gotta finish on time. But what would be the capper here? We only really covered a few flowers. Might have to continue this next week. Christie, what do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because there's so many just in the few that we've talked about. So, and we did bring up blackberries because Washington believes they're an invasive species, but they're not only food for wildlife and people, they are medicine. You can make cough syrup. They are super hot. The leaves even, not just the berries, okay?
Right.
So if, you have a cold or sore throat or even like mouth ulcers and, gum problems and such, you can make a tea of the leaves. So don't let anybody tell you that these things are invasive.
Well, the flowers are pretty, but you should also always carefully study what to do with the rest of the plant because in some cases, the whole plant is equal, right? It's all got equal use, but in other cases, some parts of the plant are better for things than others. So you have to study each one of these things as you wish to attempt to utilize them, because you may find that the leaves are better than the fruit for certain things. You may find that the stems are very good for, let's just say theoretically, for topical use. The stems are best. And I know that this is, it sounds awfully complicated, but once you start to get used to these things and you look at them in the right way and you start to study them and understand that, again, the idea of, you brought up syrups. I love that because all that stuff, that used to be the kind of thing that people made instead of going and getting, Vicks WD 4486 formula, whatever. They used to just crush these things up and say, you know what? If you put this down your throat, it's going to soothe your throat. You're going to feel better. You might breathe a little, and it'll give you a little mentholation kind of whatever, or you rub it on your chest too, so you can smell it all night. This kind of stuff used to be done without going to your local CVS, Walgreens, whatever. So I'm just saying, this is one of those old methodologies that didn't go bad. It just stopped being used because we got something in a package that you can pick up in one shot and you don't have to work for it. Well, you do have to work for it because you got to have the money to go get it. But anyway, it's one of those things. So if you can utilize something that's naturally available to you, guess what you just did? You just saved yourself some money, and you probably put something better in your body than you could give your good friends at Big Pharma credit for creating, especially your friends at Johnson & Johnson and all those other wonderful chemical companies, because that's what they are, chemical companies.
They care about us.
They care about you so much. So, never forget that you have options. That's all I'm saying. So, Christie, go ahead and complete the discussion tonight. I'm more than happy to end it here with this kind of advice to just, look, examine these things around you. A lot of things do grow commonly. Some things may be less common. I mean, not everybody's got roses in their front yard, but you could probably find them somewhere nearby. It is possible, and if you can't, maybe you can trade with a neighbor who's growing them. You never know. So,
or call me.
Or you could call Christie.
By the way, so my sage is flowering right now.
Right.
And I just posted a link in the chat. And just quickly, published reports of its ability to prevent and cure illnesses such as, these are their words, quote, obesity, diabetes, depression, dementia, lupus, autism, heart disease, and cancer. Okay, and since we only have another minute left, lavender, that's super popular, right? Mm-hmm. And not only, you brought up rose in your burn ointment, but lavender, it is pretty well known for its burn healing or eliminating abilities if you're able to get that on your burn immediately. But the report I just posted in your chat, I'll read the, well, it basically, this is what it says.
It's okay, take a couple of minutes, go ahead.
A double-blind, randomized study of lavender oil preparation in comparison to Lorazepam for generalized anxiety disorder, and the results are that the lavender works better than the benzos for anxiety. So I'll leave you with that one, I guess, since that's pretty basic and simple. I mean, I guess we'll continue this next week and hit up some more flowers that are blooming, like lilac. Lilac is anti-malarial, okay? And also skin healing, cancer capabilities, tonic, stringent, like all the rest we're talking about. So,
well, it helps you deal with a lot of different bug bites, not just because malaria, you might think mosquito, but honestly, lilac is something that can help you with ant bites and various other insects. Lilac, just in its raw form, can help topically, but there's other ways to apply it as well, isn't there?
Right. And as far as like topical flowers or weeds or things that might be blooming out there right now to assist in bug bites or skin issues, you can always grab like a plantain or yarrow, any part of the yarrow plant in any type of season, whether it's just the leaves or just the flowers or all of it. You can put that directly on your wounds, your bites, etc. There are also insect repellents, which also come in handy, which is another reason we want to make friends with our flowers and plant or let them grow accordingly in our own yards, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing is that, a long time ago somebody said something to me and I thought they were a little crazy, but turns out to be true. Any problem that is created by nature, generally the solution for the problem that's created by nature, and they use the example of poison ivy.
Right.
They would say, look, if you're standing in a patch of poison ivy and you're in a naturally growing area, the chances are that within your line of sight, if you turn 360 degrees, you will find, guess what? The plant that'll take care of the problem caused by poison ivy.
Right, and that's called jewelweed, by the way.
Yes, it
so
is.
They have beautiful little orange flowers that I don't really know how to describe them, but
Right.
they have kind of darker and lighter little spots on the ends of the beautiful petals. So yeah, and
Yeah.
then violets, of course, they're medicine too, and also shrink tumors. But we are out of time, so we will continue.
Yeah,
Flower power.
Let's do Flower Power Part 2 next Tuesday. Christie Aphrodite, and of course, go to ChristieAphrodite.com. Go to mytrueessence.net. Explore, examine, and learn for yourself what may be available to you. Listen, look, she'll sell you a product, sure, but she'll also teach you something, and selling the product is not the key. Actually, it's educating and healing. That is what
Empowering you all to do the same.
you got it. So there you have it, and I thank you guys